Keith Meyers has done this enough times, he has it down to a science. After he unloads all of the items, he carefully puts each one up on display. This is his traveling military museum. Over the years, he has collected uniforms, pictures, and other historical artifacts.
There are things on display today from Iwo Jima, Pearl Harbor, a POW, a gentleman who was in the Army Air Corps who was killed in action. And these articles, for him, they were headed to the dump because the family didn't want them, and I was alerted to it and I was able to acquire them. I have things on my dad, some paratrooper. I have some things from D-Day, a piece of parachute from Normandy D-Day. A buddy of mine who was with the 82nd Airborne, he used that parachute, or the total parachute, when he jumped down into D-Day, Normandy at St. Mary-Église. So yeah, I'm fortunate I have a lot of historical items.
Meyers takes his collection to schools, civic clubs, libraries, veterans organizations, and retirement homes like this one. All of the programs are free of charge. He's retired, and it's something he enjoys doing. And
one thing on the side that I really enjoy is when I do the big public displays. There will always be somebody that will come by and say, "Oh, I worked with," so we'll say Joe Brown. "I worked with Joe Brown, and there's no way Joe Brown ever fit in that uniform." So we'll have a little laugh about it, and I'll say, "Could I take your name and phone number, and I'll call Joe Brown and tell him what you thought about his not being able to wear the uniform." So I hear interesting stories, and when I come to retirement centers like this, I'll have widows come up and tell me about their husbands or brothers and so forth. So I hear some great stories. So that's the reward I have, is just hearing some wonderful things that people have to say about the display.
As part of his presentation at this retirement home, he tells his audience that many times he'll get to teach younger generations about history through the stories behind each item.
They'll see a picture of an older gentleman and they'll say, "Gosh, he looks like my granddad." And I'll explain to them, well, our soldiers are real people like everybody else, except they have served in the military, and they can become fathers, grandparents, and so forth.
He started this hobby 3 decades ago as a favor to a friend and has never looked back.
I am not a veteran, and I started in 1980 as a collector of these things. And then in 1984, a friend of mine who was a disabled American veteran Marine from a Korean War, asked me if I would do some programs on behalf of DAV leading up to the 40th anniversary of the celebration of Normandy and D-Day. So I said, okay, sure. And then teachers started asking me, and now today is the 352nd program since 1984.
He says he's fortunate to have so many historical items with names and stories to go behind them, because his ultimate goal through these programs is to show the faces that fought for America's freedom.
What I'm hoping the people learn is that we do need to remember our veterans. We also need to reflect upon the sacrifices that they have made in defense of freedom.
And it's that motivation that makes him eager to plan for his next presentation. The Traveling Military Museum will have a much bigger display than this one over Memorial Weekend at Promenade Mall in Tulsa. For the Oklahoma News Report, I'm Angela Rosecrans.